Hi there, my name's Dusty Redbird, and I'm trying to make a video game. So I decided to start this YouTube series as a sort of devlog type thing to mostly keep me honest in actually working on it. And I wanted to show a little bit of sort of an early prototype, and then most of the series will be going through how we got to this and then future steps. So this is the game. Basically, you're a little dwarf, you run a little pub, other dwarfs come in, they want beer because they're dwarfs. So we're going to go over here, going to pick up a beer from the barrel. Alright, I've already fucked up. You're supposed to basically hit that sweet spot to get a good pour. So then we'll give that guy a beer. Come back over here, drop a beer off here. As you can see, things kind of start escalating pretty quickly. You can stack beers, run around, continue giving them beers. When they're done, they get up, they walk away, they're happy, or they're not, depending on how good the beer is. And then you have to pick up the old mugs, and really, I'm going to have it so you wash them, but for now you just mystically put them back in a barrel. So when I sat down to basically think through what I want to make in this game, one of the first things I did was try and pick something easy, sort of simple with a limited scope. A game that really stood out to me is Overcooked. The mechanics aren't too hard, it requires a lot of cooperation, and Overcooked really is more of a sort of puzzle management game where it uses the map design to make it challenging for you. I don't know that I really wanted to get too much into the puzzle and map design aspect of it, but I think sort of starting at a big picture, Overcooked was a game that I thought was pretty simple, pretty straightforward, really fun, and something I'd kind of want to, generally start thinking about as a framework. Other things that I really enjoy are cooperation. And, the example I think of for this is a Destiny 2 raid or some other game where one of the core mechanics is different people have to communicate constantly. You have to be passing information back and forth and doing separate jobs, which sort of fits into Overcooked, although I think that there's definitely some distinctions you can have between the two. Then for theming, I really like fantasy. I think dwarves and dwarven pubs, fantasy taverns was sort of a fun idea to start working with, so I wanted something sort of in that realm. I think that also helps set it apart from other management sim type games like Overcooked. I wanted it to involve beer. I think most of these food type games are really food based, and I think that there's a lot of cool sort of mechanics you could think of with brewing, with making different types of beer, different flavors, and it sort of fit pretty naturally in with the dwarven miners coming back from a day of mining, and they're going to all want different kinds of beer, and so you can kind of create a lot of depth through that. And then I wanted it to sort of incorporate some of the simulation elements, some of the things like even a roguelike where you're trying to build up your tavern, because I think that sort of gameplay loop of doing a day of chaos, working on your tavern, working on new recipes, working on different types of brews, and sort of exploring that would be a cool place to start. We'll see where this all ends up, but this is kind of the big picture roadmap I started with. And one of the first things I needed to do was really think about where I do not have the skill sets that are going to be able to make this game. And one of those big things is being an artist. If this video and the quality so far has not made that clear, I'm not really a big 3D or 2D artist. I can do some pixel art. I've definitely played around with some 3D modeling, but something like this, a whole 3D or 2D game, is going to require a lot of art assets. And so one of the ways that I found to basically attack this, and this is just from making a lot of little games that I never finished in Unity, is something called AssetForge. And basically, I booted it up, bought the premium, and then within a couple minutes I was able to make this little dwarf. And to me, this sort of signified the level of detail, the level of art that I was looking for in the game, and seemed pretty easy to iterate on. So for this video, I'll kind of walk through some of those assets and how I sort of started putting together different ones, and then I think for the next video we'll actually go into some of the Unity sort of programming and how that all worked together. Is AssetForge. This is the software that I've been using to basically start putting together 3D assets, mostly to prototype, but frankly I think this kind of art style lends itself well to this kind of a cooperative, chaotic game. And really, AssetForge is pretty easy to use. The hard thing is you got to get a little creative in how you're going to combine the assets it gives you. So for each character, there's different pieces. So characters aren't too bad because they're almost like little Lego people. You can come in here and pick characters, and then it's just got pre-built pieces. And you know, the limitation to AssetForge is you have the pieces it gives you. I guess you could import your own, but they're nice. They're all sort of a consistent art style, a consistent usability, and they're all going to import into Unity really well. So I basically just went through and picked a few little pieces, put them together, and then it's just about sliding them and moving them around to get them into the actual design you want. So here I'll show another one. So this is a hallway, and so you can see it's just wall pieces and floor pieces. And I think as I use AssetForge more and as I get a better sense of how it imports into Unity and how I want to structure my game assets, I might change some of this. So for example, you can see right here I've got a really long wall piece and then a bunch of little ones, and then another really long one. In the end, I don't really know that I need all those repeating because each one of these is going to be a separate thing that has to load and have separate textures. It might be easier to just have one full wall piece. But for now, I sort of left some of these a little separate, partly because I was lazy when I made it, and partly because I might later want to make it so that you can remove one of these, for example, and add a new room. So I wanted to give myself a little flexibility on that. And the nice thing about AssetForge is you can make pretty big, usable assets without a whole lot of work. I mean, this entire map in here probably took me 20 minutes, if even. And this, I was kind of just mapping out a little test room. And so the idea here is on these edges here, dwarves will spawn, little NPCs, they'll walk in. This will be kind of the main room where you're serving dwarves. And then back here is the kitchen. And so it's kind of starting with this big picture framework, I was able to build this room and put it together. And then now I'll show you how I basically import it into Unity and get it working in there. So here in Unity, you can see the actual room itself. This is basically my working prototype right now. So there's a lot more going on than just the assets, but you can see that the actual room is the same room. What I have done is retextured some of it. These are different textures I got from free texture packs and some of the stuff that they have for Unreal Engine, some of the texture packs that they offer for free. Right now I'm just kind of poking around with it. Later I'll actually check all the textures and find ones that are the right sort of fit and the right, content and licensing restrictions and all that. And I've been kind of playing with a bit of a more realistic look. I don't know how I feel about it. On one hand, I wanted to find ways I can differentiate this game from other sort of similar games. And I think having a less cartoony vibe might be good. But on the same token, I also think if my dwarf looks like this, you can have this sort of jarring difference between, a little blockhead, silly dwarf, and like a weirdly photorealistic room with lighting. So Go ahead and in the comments, let me know what you think about the art style and whether it's sort of clashing or, you know, too dark. That's also something I've been feeling, is that some parts are a little dark, and my solution keeps being to just add more lights, which is not doing great for performance. So obviously optimization is going to come at a later date. But to add the actual assets in there, all I'm doing is basically exporting from AssetForge. So if I take this, I can export the model. You just pick Unity and export it. You can choose whether to merge things together or keep them separate. But once you actually export it, this is it. I mean, it's really quite nice. You could just drag it right in there. And it's going to have all of the textures straight from your AssetForge. So you can see here, if I do the test room, it looks different because all the textures are different. It'll create a new object over here on the left, and it's just going to use basically the default textures from your AssetForge export, which might be fine. But for me, I then basically came in and somewhere in here did the textures. Here it is. And so these are just like different ones that I've found and put together and sort of prepped up. And then all you have to do is open up your object on the mesh renderer and just change your textures here. Just drag this over. So it's pretty easy to actually swap out textures and adjust their settings and make them sort of fit that piece. So for this video, that's kind of the scope of what I wanted to go into, but I did actually use some of this to learn how to change the color of dwarves, because at some point it would be a little boring having only ginger dwarves, as great as they are. I wanted to make it so that you could have random dwarfs with different beard colors and different skin colors and shirts and pants and all of that. So in the next video, I'll kind of go over some of that code and start sort of going over some of the architecture of how I'm actually building this together to get to the playable game. So I'm new to YouTube, new to making videos. So if you have any feedback, you have any suggestions, please just leave them in the comment. And as always, I appreciate any likes or subscribes. It's how this mystical YouTube algorithm works. So look forward to seeing you in the next one.